All right, everyone, welcome back to the Circle Club. I'm Tyrone, and I'm here with professional chef CJ, my man. I've known this dude since I was probably like 13, 12, like a decade. My man, thank you for coming on.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we just watched The Bear on Hulu with Jeremy Allen from Shameless. What was just your initial thoughts of it? Did you like it? What were your thoughts?
I actually, I love the idea of it. I really like, I forget his name, Jeremy something, I think.
Jeremy Allen White.
Yeah. I think I love the look of him, like the way he just looks, the tattoos, rolled up sleeves, shaggy hair, just like kind of emotionless face. Like that is the look of a chef. You knew, like, just by looking at him. That opening scene when everybody's kind of like, running around like chaos, behind and whatnot. And he's just trying to like lay down the law, that's kind of every day. That's the pace of the kitchen, you just gotta kind of try to keep up.
Yeah, man. And there's a couple chefs in this show, right? Like I think one of those dudes,
Matheson.
Yes, thank you, Matty Matheson. Like he's like a real chef. He's a real deal, right?
Yeah, his story's really, really funny. I love watching his cooking videos. And
he plays Fack. He plays Fack in this.
Yep. Yeah,
very funny, man. But so we got you here, CJ, so you can ask some questions, like what was real, what was BS, like, because us as the audience, man, we really know how much is actually real in this. And but so you said off the bat, like the chaos and scrambling in the kitchen, like that is very real, right?
Oh yeah. And like the communication too, the kitchen's a really loud place, so everybody's yelling, trying to like, you gotta let the guy next to you kind of know where you're at. And, that's an everyday kind of thing. And I definitely recognize that they like, they made sure to, talk about that and expose that.
So what did you think about some of the language that they used in the show, like staging, corner, behind, yes chef? Like is that really how it goes down, or is that a bit dramatic? What do you think?
No, I mean, like if anything, they could have gotten so much deeper, I think. But I think, I think it would have gone over a lot of people's heads. And you said staging, it's staging, and what really is, like, anybody can do that. You could like, say like, hey, I'm a starting out cook, I want to stage your restaurant. Yeah, that basically means that you just want to come check out the place and help out for a day. I think that like the things that they had her doing though, it's kind of a lot to give somebody who's just staging.
Okay. Is that something that you've done, or like people who've done it?
Oh yeah, every cook in like culinary school, every young culinarian, they got to stage. I've worked at one place, and then they tell me about this other place I should really go check out, and I'll go check it out. I'll stage there. You get to meet a lot of people that way, I mean, like, and even if just like, you're like, oh, you're really curious about like the food and the things that they kind of have going on and stuff, like there's those things are encouraged, what I mean? Like to go out.
That's so dope. It's almost like you compare it to like an NFL team or NBA. It's like, hey, we're down a point guard. Like, yo, let's pull someone up from like the G League or like the minor leagues, and they come and help out. Because that was another thing I was curious. I was like, are they just gonna let her jump in there like that? Like, did that happens? Like, how often does that really happen though?
I would say it happens like frequently. I would say. I mean, like it's a blessing, I think, if a chef doesn't kind of have to like search and stretch himself thin to like find cooks and prep cooks and things like that. Yeah. Because like, the restaurant industry, the turnover is insane. You know what I mean?
And that was.
I think what the Bear does is kind of like shows that they got their own like little family though. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have people coming in and out. So the fact that you got this new chef and this new like helper, whoever she is to them, in and around, kind of, invading their system, what I mean? That's like, that's completely out of like left field for them. And at a place like that would kind of make sense. It's like a mom and pop kind of
thing. So there's some of these like auteur like restaurants where it's like people are coming in and out all the time, but then the mom and pops, it's a bit more like the people who've been there have been there for like 15 years, 10 years, like really long periods.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you were to go and call them and be like, hey, can I stage there? They'd be like, why? like, well, like, why are you here? Like,
yeah, like, what do you want? Oh, that's hilarious. So you mentioned family, and I don't know if is that what it's really called, or it's like this dinner before the dinner and everyone's cooking. Is that sort of a thing that happens in the restaurant world?
Oh yeah, family meal is extremely important. You know, like maybe they'll refer to something else about like the staff meal, but
yeah,
you know, I think it's really easy to kind of compare a kitchen style system to a family. You know, you spend so much time with all those people in the kitchen on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Like it's very much so, you know, a family at the end of the day. There's terrible. You know, like everybody's having a terrible day. We're doing more than we can physically possibly handle. But like the minute that last ticket goes out, or it's the last 5 minutes of like a big banquet party, you know, that's when everybody kind of comes together and it's like the relief is off the shoulders, you know.
Yeah. And I noticed that Carmy, he was like as everyone's having family, he was sort of to the side, like stressing, like going to get a cigarette and was like ripping his hair out. Like, does the chef also eat with everyone else? Does that happen, or are they just so stressed about the rest of the day that they're kind of in their own world?
That's a really good question, because like I've been thinking about like if you were gonna ask me, it's like something similar to this like beforehand. So this is good that you brought it up. I would say it's a little bit of both. The chef has got to show his face at least like once or twice a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you think about it, you know, all the line cooks, they want the chef to try the food. So he's constantly eating throughout the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's usually in his office doing like paperwork or like constantly eating throughout the day. So like when family does come, he usually will like pop his head in and be like, hey, how's everybody doing? Like, you know what I mean? Just to kind of like check in and whatnot. But, you know, I think family meal is like more for everybody else than it is for the chef himself. But there are a lot of times where the chef is going to be there every family meal and he'll be the one like spearheading it.
Kind of giving like the team hurrah and like, let's get our stuff together and, you know, no mistakes and all that, and you can be better.
Or just like even small family talk, like, you know, how's your kids, how's your cousin, how's your sister, how you like, you know, how was your 4th of July, you know?
Yeah, because like you said, it's called family for a reason, right? It's a family, and then like you spend so much intimate time. Like it's funny, like when I'm in the kitchen just for myself and I'm like, hey, like you want to help out, like I'll ask my girlfriend or whatever, I'm like, hey, can you like cut this for me? Like I find myself just at home sometimes being like, come on, like a little bit faster, like come on, like this is not timing up right, you know what I'm saying? So like I can't even imagine it in your world. Like I would be screaming, like I'd be literally screaming, like come on, get the fucking like peas together, like let's go, like, you know, like so with that being said, like Carmy like yelling at everyone and like everyone sort of having their own little territories, like do you think that was pretty accurate as well?
Yeah, I definitely think, especially in his situation, it's really hard for, you know, the executive chef or chef de cuisine to just kind of like hop in and implement the things that he wants to implement. You know what I mean? Like in a kitchen, you really got to prove yourself to get that respect of everybody. I think there's really good scene. I don't remember her name, but she kind of snaps at the sous chef Sydney, about making mashed potatoes, and she's like, I've been doing this for 25 years before you even decided to be a cook.
Tina, Tina yells at Sydney, yeah,
there's a person like Tina in every kitchen that you're just gonna have to like, you know.
it's like, boy, I've been making like potatoes before you were like out the womb, like get out of here. You're like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it can be really difficult for like a chef de cuisine or chef to kind of like keep his head on straight in moments like that.
Yeah.
And like when pressure is really kind of, you know, get into it and a decision needs to be made, kind of like the law gets like, the hammer comes down.
Right. Like, listen, this is my restaurant. Yeah. And I looked into a couple other chefs who've seen the show and talked about it. And some of them have said that it's very, very common. And I'm curious what your experience was this like being a chef. It's very common that like you come out of college or culinary school and you think you're hot shit and you know everything. And then so like you get there and people kind of like, you look at this clown, like you don't really know what you're doing. Like, does that happen like all the time?
Constantly. I think like it's bad sometimes, man. Like, there'll be
like, what are some examples of like some of the, like, are they just using terminology that everyone else is like, just call it a goddamn pickle, like, like.
No, I would say like when like a young kid comes into the kitchen, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be an executive chef in 5 years, and then like he's doing like basic knife skills and he cuts himself, and then you're just like, dude, you barely can peel a goddamn potato.
So I'm glad that you actually said that. So, can you just talk about the importance of like having a sharp knife, like how important that is? Like, I feel like that was one thing and I was surprised that wasn't more in this show. Like, and it's probably because they're seasoned at that point. But like, I've heard some chefs say things like, if you have a dull knife, not only are you slowing down everyone else, you're gonna cut yourself. Like, it like, is that something? Because like when we see Sydney cut herself in that scene, again, it's like this amateur chef trying to like. Is that something that also happens all the time too? People just bleeding everywhere and medics like. Or is that a little bit exaggerated?
I'd say the health and sanitation of the entire show is a little bit exaggerated. If the kitchen ever looked like that, people are getting fired.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you got to have a sharp knife. Like if your knife isn't sharp, you're going to increase the chances of cutting yourself because, you're trying to manipulate the product way too much, and then you just kind of like slip and cut into your hand. It's also like, like you said, it's like it's more difficult to get consistent knife cuts with the dull knife. Your product won't last as long. You cut that onion and you have a dull knife, you just like pureed this onion and now it's gonna be mush in like a day.
Yeah.
Like you can't use that. I've heard some horror stories, like chefs will like come and check your knife and if it's not sharp, they'll just throw it in the trash.
So that was another thing I was going to ask you too, is because I've heard that like some chefs will like see that you're dull, like you have a dull knife and they just let it happen. They're like, you're going to learn a lesson today.
Yeah, I mean, like that depends on the chef,
some of them are really hard on like that or no.
Nah, yeah, yes. I mean, like in their own way, I think what I've experienced a lot is like small talk will be happening. Chef will come on the line and be like, hey, how's it going? I'll look at my knife. He'll be like, oh, what's this? And just sit there, kind of like flip the blade a little bit, check out what you're doing. Be like, it's a pretty dull knife you have here. And you just like kind of give you a bunch of bullshit about it. And then it's, okay, my knife better be sharp tomorrow.
And we'll get into the executives for a second, but the onion hazing scene, I was curious about that, like, because I feel like that's at every job. You got a little bit of hazing going on, like lighthearted. Does that happen too, where it's like the new kid on the block, they take the onions in the prep, or like would people like flip out like, yo, we don't have time for this, like these jokes and games?
I think there's a time and a place. But that hazing is it's necessary. It kind of brings everybody together. Like you got to be able to like smile at the end of the day, even when it's like really high pressure going on. You got to find things like keep you going and keep your head up. Like we've always handled like young kids coming in or new people just in the kitchen and kind of how to ease your way into it, feel them out a little bit, and then like how to like mess with them. My favorite thing to do would be like, they'd spend all this time like cleaning their station at the end of the night, wrapping everything up. I would just go right back and poke holes in all the things they just wrapped up and maybe smash an avocado on their station.
Yeah, just to make them sort of like, hey, you got to earn your place a little bit here, and because they probably get so pissed, but it's like, hey, man, relax, we're just having fun, like, got to be lighthearted, because like that's the big thing too, is like Carmy just seems so stressed, and a lot of like some of the people don't seem it at all. Like you look at Lionel, Boyce from Odd Future, he's playing Marcus in this, and he's like off doing his own little desserts. He's in his own little world. Like, do you see that character a lot out there when you're in the cuisine world? Is there like someone who's kind of doing his own thing and doing desserts, and the chef's like, all right, I mean, can you get me the pies that we asked for?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, there's just so many different personalities, and like, you know, when you're only responsible for a certain set amount of things, like, and you're good at those and you can get it done, and no one's gonna like be on you about getting those things done, you're just like, you're in the clouds, you know. This is easy everyday kind of stuff to you, you know what I mean?
So it's because it's like he's sorry to cut you off, but Marcus is like, so he's specializing in dessert, so it's like they sort of need him, so like as he's off in his own world, it's like, all right, he'll get back on track eventually.
Yeah, and he's not going to be like super stressed out like if he's like got all his stuff in order, you know what I mean? I definitely feel like at one point, like in the show, like he started to get a little carried away. Yeah, and that backfired on him a little bit. But you know, you take somebody like Carmy, who's like worrying about each and in what everybody is doing, like, you know, not just what Marcus was doing, you know, everybody, like, so, you know, that's kind of like why he.
So let's get into the mean chefs of the world, right? So we see Carmy goes over, whap, smacks it out of Marcus's hand with the donut. He's like, what are you doing? Like, have you seen that out there as well? Like, does that happen? Like, hey, shithead, get it together. Like, we're trying to get dinner together. Like, do chefs get real aggressive like that?
It is a huge spectrum, I think, and it really depends on where you work. I think, you know, a real classical kitchen, that's something that you would see a lot of. Very physical. They don't really care who you are. Pots and pans being thrown, like, people do that. Like, that is the thing. Like, you know, like in my kitchen, it's not really like that. Like, it's just not how we do things, you know? Right, yeah. And a lot of, like, I think, like, for the most part, like, that's not how people want to be anymore, you know what I mean? They're
it's sort of like an old traditional way of doing things.
Yeah, and like, I was reading an article today about Dan Barber, who's a chef at Stone Barns in New York. And he was saying that, like, his chefs were always, like, super vocal and like aggressive with him. So like that's just what carried out of that with him, you know what I mean? Like he's like that now because like that's just how it was. Yeah, and it's funny because like it seems like Sydney, her character was sort of like, hey, like this is the old way of how people do things, like you don't have to make it that way. And I think that's sort of what she was trying to bring in, but like the further she got into the system, she sort of like kind of got that hive mind where she was thinking how everyone else does, where it's like screaming and yelling and all that. Do you think that you sort of said it, but do you think that the chef world is it close to being less like the traditional way, or is it still like got a long way to go? I would say I've been pretty fortunate with the experiences that I've had in kitchens where it's never been too bad. So I would say it's probably moving farther away from that. Okay. But again, like people lose their temper. You know what I mean? When you're working in the kitchen and there's zero room for error and you're constantly messing up, just know that you're going to be held accountable for doing that.
Yeah. This is not a profession for the like weak of mind. It clearly, like, you got to be tough clearly to work in a kitchen, right?
Yeah. And good management and good teachers, really, because at the end of the day, that's what they are, will make it so you don't mess up.
They'll kind of like
it's preventative. Yeah, like Tyrone, you could spend 6 months in a kitchen, any kitchen, my kitchen, whatever. Yeah. And by the end of that time, you wouldn't be making the same mistakes. Yeah. Like you were making when you first showed up. So if somebody, you know what I mean? Like, You serve raw chicken to somebody for 4 days in a row. Day 3, like, you're gonna get your asshole ripped open.
Yeah. And then you won't do it again. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that scene we saw where Carmy was back at that like prestigious dining place, and he's getting absolutely ripped. That was a hilarious scene. I'm sure it sucks to be in it. But you were telling me, you're like, yeah, man, like you were getting a little PTSD during that scene. Like you've seen that before. Like, so that I'm assuming is definitely something that happens. I mean, I think everyone's idea of what a kitchen is like is sort of like the Gordon Ramsay, right? Like it's like you're a fucking donkey, like just like, you know, like like I can't remember exactly what he was saying to Carmy, but he was like saying something like, he's like, I think it wasn't even Carmy, I think it was someone Carmy hired had screwed up, and he's like, oh, so you hire idiots? Are you an idiot because you hire idiots? And I'm just like he was just ripping him, and I'm like, how do you guys just keep like your blinders up and keep going? But also, like, what does everyone actually think about those chefs? Like, are they like, those chefs are assholes, or they're like, hey, he's trying to command the troops?
So I really, that entire scene, that shook me like immediately. And like I was with a bunch of kitchen people too. Yeah. And the minute that girl, she walks over to the chef, she's like, chef, my butter sauce is broken. And, you know, she's trying to fix it before the executive chef hears like kind of like what's going on. The minute he pops out, he's just like, why? Why is your butter sauce broken? That scene alone, I've had that happen to me in the middle of service, and you just don't know what to say. You got tickets that need food now, and your chef is asking you why you just, like, you ruined it. Yeah, you botched it. Like, you are the bottleneck. You screwed everyone up. And so that happens all the time. All the time. And what do people think about those chefs? Like, are the executive chefs, like, are they, do they look kind of like, man, this guy's a jerk? Or they kind of like, you know, I respect him and he just wants to have a good service? I think high-end kitchens operate off of a system, and it's like break you down and build you up. They're really verbal and aggressive like that because, you know, once you're able to handle that and cook everything perfectly, you know, you can do anything. You can work any position, you can move up, down, wherever you want to go. You can do anything if you can, you know, keep your head on straight and, you know, stay focused, no matter what is being said to you. That's why he's just kind of like sitting there just like, yes, chef. Yes, chef, because it doesn't matter what he's saying. You know what I mean? He's wrong regardless. Like, if he tries to make an excuse, it's like, you are just worthless. Like, you are just making excuses. You don't have what it takes to be great, right? Is that? Yeah, really... that, like, I think kind of like what he was saying is a little like over the top. Yeah, but there are chefs who do that and worse. Oh, you know, Jesus, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I would say, like, they're really trying to emulate like a Michelin star restaurant. Which is where that was, you know, and there are horror stories in Michelin star restaurants. Horror. There's really bad things that happen. I've heard some bad things, you know. Yeah. Give us a little taste. Give us a little taste. I don't know. I think one of my favorite things I've ever heard was every time you grab fish with a pair of tongs, a puppy dies. I was like, oh my God, dude. I was like, that's insane. But I've heard chefs like literally like somebody drop like a piece of food on the ground, doesn't clean it up immediately. He'll sneak up right behind you and be like, oh, that's like that. Like, I like what you just did right there. That like hide the shit on the floor trick. Like, how do you do that? Can you teach me that? So make them eat it or something. Like, Jesus. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, that's hilarious. One of my chefs that I used to work with, like, he really loved Burned, and he loved Burned. Burned. Have you ever seen that? Oh yeah, yeah, TV show. Yeah. There's like a scene he has that's like apologize to the turbot. The turbot, which is like a fish, you know what I mean? Like, for overcooking it. And so I would often hear that. Apologize to the tuna. Yeah. And as a chef, you just do it. Absolutely. You just, again, head down, I apologize, and you just do it. The chef is always right.
Yeah, every time. You said that you would talk a little bit about the Brigade, and you wanted to mention Escoffier.
Escoffier.
Yeah, Escoffier. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think it was actually pretty awesome that they did mention who he is. You know, Escoffier is basically like the godfather of French cuisine, and you know, Carmy doesn't like hesitate to mention like how important he is.
Yeah.
He's the one who kind of like created the Brigade system,
and like he's like Michael Jordan of cuisine.
Yeah, I mean, like he like based it off the military and kind of like implemented that into the kitchen. You know, when she mentions like when Sydney mentions that Carmy was like one of the best CDCs in all of New York or all of like the Michelin world, you know, like that's the chef de cuisine. You know, he's right under the executive chef. Sydney's role in the kitchen is pretty much fairly similar to like what I have to do on a day-to-day basis. Granted, like in my situation, there's multiple sous chefs. Yeah. So like, it's not all on me. All her assignments, not all on her. It's gonna split up, you know. So I think they really like
did a great job.
The way they broke it all up, like that's pretty much just like how it is, you know.
Yeah, I liked how they kind of described it and showed like it felt like it was like everyone is in this system, it's working, it's flowing, and like in the beginning they sort of reject some of the language like corner, behind, yes chef, and as the show goes on you start to see them adopt it more, and you even see Tina at one point where Tina is like talking to Richie, Carmy's cousin, and she's like, dude, the system works, I kind of like it, like, you know, we haven't had this sort of organization in a long time. And so I think it's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's you're trying to teach an old dog new tricks, but you realize that, you know, these new tricks, they do work and they're there for a reason. And I think that's really important too, is that clearly if this is being implemented in all of these other places, doesn't always mean that, you know, it's necessary, but it definitely probably fixes some of these shitty situations. So the other thing that, oh, go ahead. Sorry, you had some?
Yeah, I would say like, you know, in terms of like people's titles and everything, like I think that's like the responsibility hierarchy that sometimes can get like flip-flopped and whatnot, but like they definitely did a good job with like, you know, giving everybody like an identity, you know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone had a role, right?
And it's like it's important to be organized in kitchens like that. It's just like not gonna be a mess.
Two scenes that kind of stuck out to me was making stock and the health inspector scene. You guys probably make crap ton of stock all the time, right? Like did you think that was an accurate depiction? And like when it fell, was it really that big of a deal, or?
So I'll go into just like specifically what was required to make all that veal stock that fell on the ground. You know, stock work takes a long time. It's not something that can't be done quickly. It can't be rushed. You know, something that he said, he was just like, you don't add your veg in before the water comes up to a simmer. You know, I mean, that's so you want your liquid to come up to a simmer as fast as possible, because then from that point on, you're just going to be concentrating. But you never want the stock to boil, because like all the impurities and things like that you're going to be dipawashing off, which is all like that fat and that foam that comes to the top of the pot. Like if you boil your liquid, you know, you're just going to be tumbling all that stuff into your liquid, into your broth or your stock, and it's going to make it really cloudy. And depending on what you're looking for, that's not what you want. Yeah. You know, for a veal stock, which is like kind of what she dropped, like, you know, you need to get in veal bones. And, you know, for in my spot, you know, that's a 24-hour process. So you got to do all the work to get everything ready, and then you let it go for 24 hours.
So when that happens, like, how are you just not completely screwed? Like, because that was something I was thinking too. It's like there was a couple of scenes where they didn't have something fell, you lost it. Like, what do you guys do in real life when that happens?
You got a sandbag. You know what I mean by sandbag is like, you know, if I'm getting a lot of beef trim in, because we're doing a lot of fabrication from, you know, steaks or something like that, you know, I'll turn that stuff into, you know, beef sauce, and I'll just, you know, put it in the freezer. You know, when we need it, like, we'll take it. But at least I didn't lose that product.
Yeah, yeah. So it's sort of like a backup system.
Yeah, and you never want to be in a situation that, like, if the thing that you are making, like, blows up, and you're completely screwed. You never want to be in a place where you can't have, like, a backup. So, you know, if I know I'm about to run out of, say, a veal stock, you know, I'll make sure to make more veal stock before I run out, just in case.
Yeah, right.
It'll give me enough time to, like, you know, order more of my product while I still have some of my backup on, like, still there. You know what I mean?
And what about this health inspector scene? Like, I don't know if you've been in sort of any kitchens that sort of have had that happen, but they got a C, which is, you know, it's almost like it's like a public risk and they might be on the verge of closing. I thought that was a little dramatic. But what did you think? Like, are C's really given that often, or?
In that situation, they should have failed.
Really?
100%. That kitchen should have been shut down. You know, I mean, like,
why?
My kitchen right now is, like, spotless. Like, you know, you'll hear Carmy yell out every now and then, chef's housekeeping, like, break down your stations, clean it, flip the trash cans. You know what I mean? We don't call it housekeeping. We just set, like, a 2-hour timer, and everybody drops what they're doing and they clean everything. You know, for them to, like, if my place were to get a C, we're all getting fired. We're gonna start off. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like that would be terrible, because it takes kind of. I mean,
I think they said it took like 45 days or something, right, to kind of get to have her come back.
Right, and especially in a restaurant, you know what I mean? That's public information. You know, people know. You know what I mean?
You're not eating at a C. It's not right. Yeah. And
everything that she was saying was, like, pretty on point. Like, that's kind of how she would come in the kitchen and she'd be like, you know, or he or she, they'll be like, you know, that's a physical contaminant. You know, a physical contaminant is anything like glass, like wood, you know, the cigarettes, those are physical contaminants. And a chemical contaminant would be like bleach and, like, you know, degreaser, soap, or something like that.
So all that stuff is, like, it's got to be far away from where people are cooking, right?
Yeah, you got to keep that stuff far away. Like the hand sink not being warm, like hot instantly. That's a bad thing. It has to have, like, a minimum temperature. I think the hand sink itself needs to be like 110 degrees minimum. Like that has to be at least that. And you need to wash your hands for like 15 seconds. Yeah,
every time.
Right. Like that's a real, like, and there's things called HACCP plans. Like, you know, you've ever heard of, like, sous vide cooking? Like, restaurants can't do that unless they have a HACCP plan. And, like, if a health inspector comes in and sees that you have that, there's no HACCP plan right now,
you're done.
Yeah, you're gonna get everything that you made with that trash.
How often do they come?
I think it's, I want to say, once or twice, once a month probably.
And that's more than I thought, to be honest. But that's good. So before we kind of wrap up, are there,
like, I think some restaurants maybe, like, you know, like once a year, but like for me, like, the health inspectors, I feel like constantly there.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you're like a legitimate, like, you're in a, like, real restaurant too, they probably have a bit of a higher standard. So like, I'm guessing it has to do with foot traffic and are you in a public place or private and all that. But before we head out, I wanted to know, was there any one thing that you saw you were like, yo, this is so real? Like, it was like one scene that, like, really stuck with you. And then what is, like, one scene that you're like, all right, this is kind of BS. Like, this hasn't happened.
I think just, like, in general, I don't think it's just like one scene. I think the way he was talking about all the food, I thought was pretty spot on. Like the meat order comes in and they couldn't get the right roast beef.
25 pounds? No, I ordered 200.
Yeah.
So they had to do it on the bone. That's a real life decision. You know what I mean? I really thought it was like, those decisions happen all the time. Like, hey, you sent us a pork belly today. Why did you send us this pork belly today?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. We just do the deliveries and like, okay, real life decisions that, you know.
So then you just work with the pork belly for the day.
Yeah, right. And that's what you do. You gotta, you know, adjust.
Audible. Yeah. And then what about something that you were like, all right, this is sort of BS or this doesn't happen?
Okay, so one thing that I actually had to ask a couple people about, because like I wasn't 100% sure. The whole him calling everybody chef.
Yeah.
Wipe your hands on your apron, chef.
Chef. I refer to everybody as chef because it's a sign of respect.
I just don't think that's a thing. Some places, it might be some places, but like, you know, for me, if the executive chef is coming up to me and keeps on calling me chef, I almost feel like he's being like sarcastic with me. I've been in situations where like, you know, like I say something to whoever the chef is and the chef just kind of like flips back at me and it's just like, oh, you're the chef now. Okay. Chef, tell me what to do, chef.
Right, yeah.
So like that, I was just like, I've never been in this situation where like that's a term of endearment, you know?
Right, yeah.
As far as I know, my chef, his name is Chef. I don't know what his name.
Yeah.
His name in my phone, Chef. I call him. I say, hey, Chef, how was your day today? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's like it's not a title you just throw around.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Hey, man. Well, thanks for coming on and breaking all this down, all these questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
man, you definitely got to have you come back on and actually make something for us. And, you know, maybe you make something from a different show or movie or whatever. But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. Go check out the Bears on Hulu and FX. Make sure you subscribe because we make new content every single week. Chef CJ, thank you, my man.
Thank you.